Hello and welcome to episode 163 of Go the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP, and joining me as always is the sumptuous League Freak. You can find on Twitter at League Freak. Here you go then, mate.
I'm not going to fuck Andrew, alright?
Come on, mate. The last two episodes have been buttering you up.
Oh, you've talked me into it.
Sumptuous, what do you reckon?
That was a good one. That was a really good one. I wasn't expecting that one.
I thought that went up a few days ago and I went, I'm not going to forget it this time. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah, that was good. That made my balls wet.
Oh, I reckon you should change your banner on your website to the sumptuous League Freak from now on.
You know what? I will do it because I downloaded a graphics program just today to do some graphics work, and yeah, it's time for a new banner on the website, so that's what I'll do. I'll call myself the sumptuous League Freak.
Oh, that's going to go real well.
Yeah.
Now, there's been a little bit of shit go on in the last few days, let's be honest, in the rugby league world.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, we're not just talking here either. There's been a bit going on over in the UK too. Where do you want to start? Here or over there?
Let's start in the UK for a change. I know that we've got some Pommy listeners. They like to listen to us in the bath. Not really. But yeah, let's go through. So one of the big stories over there was that the UK government approved £16 million in loans to the Rugby Football League to stop the sport from dying during the pandemic. And how much did you say that was in Australian dollars?
About 31 million.
That's not insignificant.
No, it's a pretty good sum of money over there, especially when there's, 3 teams left in England playing in the Super League?
Yeah.
It's a good sized loan. I must say it's, while some of the taxpayers probably won't be very happy with that money going there, it's a pretty good get for the Super League over there.
Yeah, it really is, and it's going to be interesting to see how they spend that money. I know that the Rugby Football League is really, really good at spending money. The taxpayers aren't getting that money back. They probably know that. If I was a taxpayer, I'd be pretty pissed off about this, actually.
Do you reckon they'll use it to buy that ground at Bradford?
How much did we work out that ground was? Did we ever get a price on that?
No, we didn't. But gee, I reckon £16 million should almost cover it, shouldn't it?
That probably would. Maybe what they can do is they can get Odsal, right? They can create a bubble with that money that the government's given them, just a big bubble over the stadium, and put all of the English Rugby League players in it. And then, I don't know, just close it up, walk away.
Flatten out that corner up in the end there where the ground goes on a bit of a hill, doesn't it? The back corner of one of the, yeah. Just flatten that out. Someone can just go over there with a shovel.
It would be handy. It'd be handy.
Just make it flat like most normal football grounds.
There was a really interesting quote that I read it to you, and then you gave me a really, really good fact that come in just on the back of that. So Ralph Rimmer, who's got one of the best names in all of sport.
Oh, it's the greatest.
Mr. Rimmer. He said, this is his quote, "Rugby league is not a wealthy sport, but it is rich in the things that matter most. Outstanding sporting and life chances in often disadvantaged communities." Now, what did you...
That came out in the same week that the RFL decided they were scrapping the £15,000 minimum income for Super League players.
Yeah, how good's that?
Yeah, there's opportunity for you people. Go and play the Super League for £5,000 a year.
Yeah, well, you got to make sure there's some disadvantaged people in rugby league still. You don't want them all on $15,000 a year.
You could probably work as a part-time employee at McDonald's over there and earn more money as a, backup Super League player.
You probably could, hey?
Just think about that.
Man, that's terrible, actually, when you think about it.
Pretty bloody sad.
What are some of the jobs that they would have in England for rugby league players? Like, we know the jobs that we have over here for rugby league players. Some of them, I mean, we've seen some former Newcastle players have been couriers after they've retired, things like that. But I'm thinking over in England.
I just say there'd be people working at Nando's, wouldn't they?
Yeah, Nando's. Apparently there's a Nando's every 5 yards in England.
Yes, there is.
Chimney sweeps. That would be another one. You know what's really weird in England, that they have people to wash your windows?
Yes. Yes.
What
Do you
the
reckon
fuck's all that about?
there could be some window washers?
Yeah.
Jeez, that'd be a job for Tolkani, wouldn't
Don't eat the yellow snow.
it?
What other cool jobs would they have over in England? You could grit the roads.
Grit the roads. I was going to say coal miner.
Yeah.
That's not going to stop being a job.
Yeah. I think that's everything, eh?
Pretty much covered everything there.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's some news. What was the other news that we had? Oh, we had the big international news during the week that Nigel Wood is going to stand down as the chief executive of International Rugby League at the end of 2020, and he's also going to leave his role on the board of the 2021 World Cup. So, I mean, that's a seismic change that's going to happen right there.
Yeah, I suppose it makes me wonder who's coming in. I would hope that the person who replaces him isn't from Australia or England, but something inside just says it will be.
Yeah. Well, you know what it's like when they say we want to put out an international calendar, and then you just get basically Australia and New Zealand's calendar, and then England's, and then that's it. And France is like, well, what about us? It's always so ridiculous. Like you know who I'd like to see running it? France.
Yeah, I think that'd be good to see. Get some. Do we know of any prominent French businessmen? We could get one of those on there, and they could run the international game.
Do we know any French businessmen? Can you name one French businessman?
I was going to make a joke, but I think the person's died, so I won't go there.
Okay. Now you're looking up if they're dead or not. That's fucking brilliant.
I am now. I'm pretty sure they are.
Okay. The only French person I know is Manu off of My Restaurant Rules or whatever it's called.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I don't really know any other French people.
Say my joke. I was going to say Rene Rivkin.
I don't think he was French, was he?
No, but his name was Rene.
Rene, that's close enough, I guess. So what other news? What news did we have from this side of the world, the important side of the world, on top of the world?
Well, the New Zealand Warriors are saving the NRL.
Mm-hmm.
And the NRL's taking them by making them stay in Tamworth. And is that some sort of cruel fucking joke? What is that?
Yeah, why Tamworth?
I don't know. Like, take our criticisms of Tamworth aside. Why choose Tamworth when every other team's based in pretty much Sydney or Brisbane? You know, they're in capital cities. Why Tamworth? Like, that's just a fucking long drive or a long flight from any major sporting venue. I don't get it.
So, how about this, right? Let's look at some of the alternatives. If you're going to look at a regional area, okay, so they probably could have flown into the Gold Coast Airport, which I believe is still in New South Wales. Well, it's half in New South Wales, but they're close enough. And then they could have stayed at Byron Bay. Pretty nice. Nice one. Obviously, there's reasons we can't go to Coffs Harbour. Just can't. We're not rolling the dice on that one again.
No.
Port Macquarie, a little bit similar. I don't want to go to Port Macquarie.
Yeah.
We could send them to Wollongong, but Wollongong doesn't have an airport.
Yeah.
Could have put them in Canberra. That would have been understandable.
A similar climate to Auckland this time of year.
Yep.
Bloody freezing.
Yep. Like Auckland, somewhere you really don't want to go.
Oh, I've been to Auckland. I didn't mind it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
You know what? They've got the Space Needle. Is that what they call it?
I believe that's what they call it, yeah.
Yep. And they've got a lovely harbour.
Yeah. There's no harbour in Canberra.
That's true. There is Lake Burley Griffin, though. It's pretty good.
Compared to, say, your usual standard puddles.
Yeah. Well, and it is also a man-made lake as well. There's nothing wrong with a man-made lake.
No. So yeah, I don't know. I just don't get why they chose Tamworth of all places.
Yeah.
Just pick a capital city and send them there. Like, send them to Darwin if you want to. Just why Tamworth? It's not going to be cheap for them to fly in and out of there because you've got to go on those regional flights.
Oh, they got a chartered flight, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I guess they'll get a chartered flight down into Sydney. The thing that gets me about Tamworth is that it's a fucking shithole.
Now, without going into it too much, there was a story you sent me that came from Melbourne, which we had a bit of a joke about, but it made me realise that your criticism of Tamworth, maybe Tamworth's fallen off the bandwagon a bit as far as what you criticise them for.
Listen, okay, I'm going to stop you right here because we cannot. No. Talk about this.
We're not going to go down there, but it made me realise that they've got some catching up to do, and they need to catch up fast.
Yeah, they probably do. Some of that, yeah.
Anyway, we'll move on. Another team that's got to relocate is, I don't know if you've seen this one or not, is the Melbourne Storm, because they're not allowed to do physical contact training down here in Melbourne, so they're looking at moving them to Albury, and they'll train from there.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Here's a question for you, because I don't really know this one, but how far is Albury in, say, hours drive from Melbourne?
3, maybe 4, somewhere around there.
Close.
Yeah, it's not that far.
Okay.
Yeah, it's closer to a capital city than bloody Tamworth is, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's closer to fucking, the 1960s as well.
Oh, no, Aubrey's updated now. It's all good.
You reckon?
Yeah,
where would you like to stay? If you had to pick a regional centre to stay in, where would you stay?
Yeah, Aubrey would be high on the list.
Oh, really?
Yeah, mate. I don't know if you've been there recently. In the last decade or so, they've done heaps of upgrades there. The place has got a nice little, upgraded town centre and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Pretty nice spot.
I would, I'm trying to think if there's a regional centre I like better than any others.
If you're an NRL player and you you're one of those players that causes mischief and likes getting on the piss, go to Albury. All the pubs in tiny country towns outside around there, and the mobile phone reception is absolute garbage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just go out there. Hop up to, say, Holbrook and go. They've got 3 pubs at Holbrook. Might be 2.
Shit.
No, I think they've got 3 pubs at Holbrook still. Go out there and get
a lot of time there, haven't you?
I used to play basketball at Holbrook.
Oh, really? What position did you play?
I was a guard.
Oh, my God. Oh, yeah, that's right. Basketball's for tall people.
Yeah. We had 3 tall people on our side, and I was just on 6 foot tall. And I could do layups, so they made me a guard.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. I couldn't shoot threes.
What was your team called?
Can't remember. I think it was just named after one of their sponsors, which was one of the 3 pubs.
Hey, that's good enough.
We were one of the most penalised teams in the comp because we played a bit too aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, I'd often go for a drive and I'd just tuck the ball under the arm and just run at people. You can't do that.
No.
And you're not allowed to drop the shoulder when you're doing a bit of a pick and roll. You're supposed to just stand there and let people run at you. I was nah, no one's running at me, knocking me over. So you can't drop the shoulder when you're trying to guard someone so they can shoot a 3. Apparently that's not on either.
Yeah, they frown against that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we made it to the grand final in one year. I think we finished 3rd or something the year after that. We weren't too bad, but
yeah, that's not bad.
A bit ill-disciplined.
Sounds like it.
But there's 3 pubs there. I mean, you can go there and just get yourself tanked across those, and just get up to all sorts of mischief. No one's gonna know. There's no one out there.
Yeah, like I've never been to there, and I probably will never be there. But you give it a pretty good review, so I'll always take that on board.
You know what?
When I'm
Also got possibly the best bakery in New South Wales there as well.
Oh, really? Now I'm interested.
Every time I we go for a drive up to see my parents. They don't live too far away from there.
Mhm.
Always pull in there and grab something to eat.
Okay.
Good stuff. They've got two pubs at Tarcutta on the other, a bit further up the highway.
Mm-hmm.
Go on there and get yourself tanked. They got to be careful there. There is a police station nearby the Horse and Jockey Hotel,
Mm-hmm.
so you've got to be careful with that one. RSL's up on the hill, a bit further away. So there's options.
So they're sorted. The Storm are going to be all right, is what you're saying.
Just go out there and get yourself. You can get tanked as much as you want. Do whatever crap you want. No one's ever going to know. The phone reception's so bad you won't be able to do TikTok videos. It's brilliant, and there's no hordes of young girls out there either, so you'll be fine. They're not going to get into any misconduct.
Well, that's good
Nothing to worry about. There's nothing to worry about.
Okay, so what were we talking about?
Something Tamworth?
Oh, yeah, we were talking about Tamworth. Oh, yeah, and Country Centre. So, yeah, the Storm, they got to go to Albury. So they're going to do that. The New Zealand Warriors, they've arrived in Tamworth now. They had to leave one player behind because they seem to be showing signs of not being well. So that shows that there are
he's got coronavirus.
Yeah. Shut it all down. Shut it
down.
all down.
New Zealand's fucked. It's got coronavirus.
So
No?
So it's starting to pick up momentum, which is good to see.
That's very good to see.
Mm.
What else have we got here? NRL coaches caught off guard by tackle ban on training return.
This was an interesting one because, look, I don't know how true it is. You got to be really careful with some of the stories that are put out by the media because, like, 98% of them are fucking bullshit at the moment. But it made me think about how you would do non-contact in training. Now, there's always non-contact training sessions, and that's no big deal. But I don't think that you're going to get too much out of not having contact. I mean, you play a game of touch footy, it's still, you're still mingling,
Yeah, you still got to touch them.
Yeah. And you want to touch them.
Yeah, that's right. Well, look, it says here, the AIS guidelines contain a three-step stage return to full contact training and competitions. The NRL clubs will move from level A to level B this week, which includes no tackling or wrestling drills. Level C allows clubs to return to full contact training. And NRL clubs were told they won't progress to that threshold until May 9 at the earliest, which is only a few days away.
Only a few days away. See, this is the bullshit that the media keeps pushing out. They're not even fucking training yet. And they're saying, okay, they won't be. It's like, what was the date they were coming back? I thought, wasn't it the 7th?
Yeah.
So it's not going to fucking really affect
them. They've got to wait 2 days. The season's in jeopardy.
Shut it down. Shut it down.
Oh, fuck. This could be a quick episode. We just shut everything down.
I know.
What's this one here? Oh, another Puppet Vlandis positive headline. In Vlandis we trust. Wade Graham slams reports of NRL pay dispute.
Now, this is hilarious because at one point I heard on 2GB today that what they were saying, and 2GB's Channel 9, what they were saying was that Wade Graham got on there and he said, yeah, they're open to having like a lockout basically and not going in unless their terms were met. But apparently this article completely contradicts that.
Yeah. Cronulla star Wade Graham has slammed reports that NRL players were planning to revolt over a pay dispute, saying they were right behind ARL Commission Chairman Peter Vlandis. And it's just more of what we've already discussed elsewhere. Vlandis told more than 40 NRL stars on a Zoom conference call on Friday that players will be paid 80% of their original 2020 wage. There's really nothing in this.
80% is pretty damn good considering where everything is at, and especially where sports are at. Like, how many sports that have been hit by this are going to be able to pay their players even 80% of what they got?
I've got a question. I'm not sure anyone's asked this, so don't feel bad if you don't know the answer. But I assume that the NRL pays the salary cap for each year around about November of the year before. So the 2020 salary cap would have been paid in November 2019, because that's usually when all the contracts come to an end, isn't it? And I assume that the money for the next year's salary cap is handed over then, which would make me think that the clubs have already been given their money for this year's salary cap to pay the players in full. So if they're not being paid in full, where does that extra money in the cap go? Is that going back into the club's coffers or back to the NRL?
Well, my understanding is they actually get paid month by month.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. And look, I'm willing to be corrected on that, but okay. I'm almost certain that they get paid month by month, and that's why they had, because they've paid all of the, as you say, the new season kicks in the year kicks in for rugby league on the 1st of November. So they've been paid a number of months already, even before the shutdown finished. So It's not like rugby league players only got 2 weeks worth of pay. It didn't work that way. They've been paid all the way up until the shutdown from, November. So there's not really a saving there to make. I get the point you're going for, and it would have been interesting if it was that way, but I believe it's month by month. And I don't know I don't know if they get their payment directly from the NRL or if it goes through the clubs. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to ask some questions about that.
So I suppose because the NRL pays the money to the clubs, I assume, for the salary cap, the money being saved would be going back to the NRL or back. Yeah, because the NRL's given the clubs a whole heap of extra funding already. So I assume that the savings on player salaries goes back into the NRL coffers. Well, it doesn't really go back. It's just less money that comes out of their bank account, so to speak, the NRL's bank.
Yeah, I wonder how that works because, because they haven't been being paid by the broadcasters, obviously, because there's no content to pay them for. I don't think there'll be any savings as much as there will be. It's almost like a break-even scenario. It's like we haven't been able to pay her. We're not getting paid. And as soon as we get money, we pay her. I don't know that they're going to be saving any money out of that scenario, though. That's the thing.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. That's probably a question that people who are paid journalists should probably have bothered to look into.
It would be cool, hey? Yeah. But why would you do that when you can just make some shit up?
We don't want facts.
No. Facts are so, that's so old school journalism.
Yeah, it's boring too.
Yeah.
Now, another bit of news that's popped up is that apparently the NRL ad has been axed. So Latrell Mitchell faces a bit more scrutiny over his little journey with Josh Addo-Carr going shooting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So apparently there's simply the best ad, where he was, front and center with the Aboriginal flag, which caused a whole heap of white people to get cranky. Apparently that's going to be axed now.
I think this is another non-story. I think that they've gone to the NRL and said, hey, you're going to use that advert, and they're like, oh, we don't have any plans to at the moment. We're kind of busy just trying to get things back up and running. And some journo was going, oh yeah, Latrell Mitchell axed.
Let's not say some journo. It's Danny Weidler.
Oh, there we go.
He's the Paul Crawley of the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yeah.
And he's just putting a whole heap of words in there. I can't be bothered reading his stuff, to be honest.
It's just fucking shit. Let's face it. Why don't just go back to fucking licking Sonny Bill Williams' asshole?
Well, he's not in Australia, so it's hard to line up a
he'd find a way. He'd find a way.
Nah, it's hard, mate, because there's no park bench that he can go to have a quiet little one-on-one chat.
He'd say he was saving a fucking kitten or something, you know? Every time he fucking scrambles an egg right, Danny Widler writes about it.
Yeah. Let's get to the big story here.
Yeah, this is the big one.
Channel 9 targets the NRL's digital arm as part of revised broadcast deal, and all I can say is, wow, what a fucking surprise.
We've been talking about it for, I'd suggest, months now. I think we were talking about it like, oh man, we might have been talking about this for close on 8 months, how the NRL digital is a really big asset for the game and how it is a direct competitor for the commercial networks and the commercial stations and all of those people. And so they hate it and they have rallied against it and said it's a terrible use of funding. And it turns out that they would love to be in charge of it.
Yeah. We've seen Phil Gould on Twitter this week saying that the digital arm is a big waste of money and it's ridiculous, and he shut it down and talked about how garbage it is. And if it's so bad, why does Channel 9 want it? His employer. And that's because it's not so bad. It's actually generating revenue.
Exactly. And I wrote about this today on my website. The article didn't get as much traction as I thought it would. But can you imagine the NRL website filled with the absolute fucking trash that you see coming out of Nine and their stations and their publications, where it is just like, makes you want to vomit seeing the crap that they come up with. I mean, how many times do we want to hear how funny it was that time that Andrew Johns was out in the piss? You know, there's only so many times you can hear that. How many times do we want to see fucking articles on NRL.com about how Phil Gould knew that every fucking team was always going to win the premiership?
Yeah. He always knows that after they won it.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
It's interesting. Channel 9 believes. It's only a belief.
Mm-hmm.
Just remember that. They believe that the NRL digital arm directly runs in competition with Channel 9. It's only a belief.
Yeah.
They don't know if it's fact yet. You stupid bastards. Of course they fucking run in direct competition with you. That's why it exists.
And
if you did your job better, that wouldn't exist.
Yeah, and how about this, Andrew? What's the problem with that?
Exactly. Well, it's competition.
But it's like, that's fine, right? This is our thing. We're doing our thing. You do your shit. And, you know, that they're like pouting because they don't produce as good content as the NRL does about rugby league. And then they're saying, well, this shouldn't even exist because it runs in competition. It's like, go fuck yourselves. Like, what are we supposed to do? Shut everything down? And look, that's the way Channel 9's always looked at rugby league. Like, they don't like the international games because it takes away from the club comp. And that runs it. Like, if it was up to, look, we saw it this year. If it was up to Channel 9, they would have scrapped the entire season because it would have saved Channel 9 $120 million. That's what Channel 9 thinks of rugby league. They would stop it from being played if they thought they could make a dollar out of it. So if they don't like NRL digital, no one should fucking care. And it should be a vital part of Peter Volandi's entire focus to keep NRL digital as an independent source of information for the fans of the game and have that independent reach and not have to rely on these fucking scumbags at commercial stations who don't care about the game.
Never have. It says here, the NRL's profitable digital network, which was recently valued at $50 million and costs about $15 million a year to run, including $10 million to provide clubs with digital services. That's right, $35 million. That's the difference between what it's currently valued at and how much it costs to run it per year.
Incredible. It's incredible. Have I ever said how I went and saw years ago the place that ran the NRL website?
Yes, off air.
Oh, have I never talked about it? Okay, so, man, this must have been might have been 10 years ago or something. I remember I was critical of the NRL website, which at the time I didn't think it did what it needed to be doing. And one of the people that was in charge of running the website got in touch with me through Twitter and said, listen, we've seen your criticism. We understand the way you feel. We'd like to invite you into the offices to check out what happens here. And so I went there. Now I can't remember the name of the person, but they were lovely when I got there. They showed me around, introduced me to some people there. It wasn't a huge office, but there was quite a few people working there. And they showed me the back end of the website. We talked a little bit about, my criticisms of the website and what I would like to see happen. And they spoke to me about how much they really wanted to do those things, but they weren't able to at that time. And it was a real balancing act for them in terms of what they wanted to do and what the league gave them funding to do and what the clubs wanted to do themselves. Now, since I've been there, I've been able to see with the website that the NRL has given them more funding, obviously. You can see that. And they've been able to do more of the stuff. And it might be a different company that runs it as well. I don't know. But that you can see the NRL website is its own thing now. You can see that they don't have to worry about, making sure that they have the funding to do things and things like that. And it's been great to see it. And now you look at the NRL website and it's just a good outlet. You get a lot of good footy stories. You get a lot of news. You've got to always remember that it's coming from the NRL, so you're not going to get the worst news. You're not going to get exposés about, the game not being run well or anything like that. But it is a good, pure footy news outlet. And I think Peter V'landys, this might be his legacy right here. The NRL digital footprint, which in this day and age is absolutely vital for the game. He needs to protect it.
He does. It's a massive asset. Let's make no mistake. It's a massive asset that's only going to go increasing value, and has so much potential benefit to the game as well. So it would be absolute suicide if they were to throw this away just to try and keep one broadcaster happy. A broadcaster who always has the shits with the game and tries to do what they can to undermine it to try and drive down the cost of it, let's be honest.
Yeah.
The thing is, it appears that Nine Chief Executive Hugh Marks had been kind of banking on the NRL not going ahead this year, and he's sort of seen that as we've just saved $130 million this year.
Mm-hmm.
And now that the rugby league's coming back on again, that money now has to go back into the game. And now it seems like they're now in a situation where they can't afford to have 60 minutes on anymore. And it's kind of ironic that this company, which only a few weeks ago ran a pretty strong campaign about the NRL being bad financial managers, are actual bad financial managers themselves. And given that the outcome of their criticism of the NRL led to Todd Greenberg walking away from the job that he'd been doing reasonably well, maybe Hugh Marks should do the same thing at Nine.
Yeah, he should. It's fucking unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. After seeing and you used the word campaign. And it was a campaign that was, it was orchestrated. It was every single person that worked for that company fucking leaped onto social media and just started spewing shit. And everyone else on social media saw it and was like hit with this wave of bullshit. And it was very transparent. And Phil Good still goes on with it, but Phil Good's gone crazy. It's crazy that this fucking organisation pointed the finger so many times at the NRL, and now they're having to turn around and say, "Whoops, remember that 120 million we were gonna just put in the bank? Well, we got to spend it on the content, and
that we'd agreed to spend it on too."
Yeah,
they've agreed to spend it on twice now in 2 different deals. You know, the one that was currently in place and the one they just negotiated with Peter V'landys after they got Greenberg ousted.
Mm-hmm. And then they want to run NRL Digital. Can you imagine that the shit that they would turn NRL Digital to?
It would be hard.
It really
would be hard.
And you know what? In 2020, where digital streaming is it's not the future, it's the now. Like, I mean, when the NRL season kicks back in, I will go back on to getting KO Sport. It won't be the old Foxtel box. I won't be watching Channel 9 at all. It'll be KO Sport that I'll watch it through, so it's all going to be streaming. I watch all my NBA is streaming in HD. That's where it's not the future, it's now. You know, there's how many kids don't get the concept of sitting down and watching TV and then it stops so we can watch adverts about, you know, some fuckwit cooking something for Coles for 2 minutes and, you know, where you can get your fucking alcohol at. It's the future is streaming, and to have it set up and running and you've got this massive outlet, to undermine that in any way would be the most disgusting thing I've ever seen an Australian Rugby League administrator do.
Yeah, I do worry that V'landys is going to do what no one wants.
So do I.
It's only because these last, month and a half, he's shown a pretty good track record of as I said on Twitter recently, of kowtowing to what they wanted and just, you know, going down the knees and saying, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yeah.
You know, we had James Hooper with his ignorant bullshit article, and I know Hooper works for News Limited, but that was about attacking Todd Greenberg and the administration costs. Channel 9 jumped onto that bandwagon and went even harder on it, and then 2 weeks later Greenberg's gone. Channel 9 then said, you know, the NRL's horrible money managers and we've been giving them money to help them out, and we think that the next rights deal needs to be for a lower price. And next thing, V'landys has rushed through a new contract and it's lengthened the current deal for less money. So again, Nine's got what they wanted and V'landys has helped deliver that. This just seems like the holy trinity, I guess, for Channel 9. I think the digital arm's like tick, tick, tick. You beauty. And I've had a few people, I've been, obviously, no surprise there, I've been very critical of V'landys and all of this. I've had a few people rightfully say that there are other members on the ARL commission. How come they don't get any criticism? And it's true, they probably should get some criticism because, you know, they're on there as well. But V'landys is head of the board, so it should all be directed at him. And he's been pretty prominent in being in the media and being front and center of this whole operation. And none of this stuff was a risk before he became chairman of the RLC.
Yeah, and like as soon as he got that chairman's role, he basically took control of the game. Now we haven't even got a CEO at the NRL level, so it's all on V'landys at the moment. I mean, we've got a stand-in CEO, but like V'landys is the guy that is in charge now, and you know, I think you and me have mentioned the ARL board and what their role is in this. At this stage, you would have to say that they've taken a back seat to V'landys as everyone else has. But if we see NRL Digital undermined or its funding cut or anything like that, it will have to go on the board members as well. Because I can't imagine that they wouldn't have some role in signing off on that as a board. I mean, that would be a big decision. So, man, look, Rugby League has got more money in it now than it ever has before. And it's fine. These aren't things that are going to destroy the game, but it's at a very critical moment of being able to have its true independence and giving up that independence. And it's going to be interesting to see where Peter V'landys decides to take it. If he is as strong and as good of an administrator as people are saying, he will keep the game independent and he will make sure that it has its digital arm and he won't undermine that. If he keeps bowing down to the broadcasters, well, then he's just, it's just all bullshit and marketing in terms of what people say about him. And now we're going to see. We're going to find out. And this is one of his big tests, is NRL Digital. I dare say it's the first time that me and you have been like line in the sand moment for Peter V'landys is NRL Digital. Would that be true with you?
Absolutely. Some of the shit you can forgive and move on from, but this is something about the game's future. Not just the website and the value to fans, but also for the game itself and for revenue.
Yeah.
Can't be throwing that away, and generally worried that could happen. So, if he wants to show that he's an independent free thinker who has a spine, then he won't do what Channel 9 wants again. He'll hold firm and say, no, we're not ditching the digital arm. Now, you said a word there before, bullshit, and it's made me go to the next item here, which is an opinion piece by Peter Fitzsimons.
Oh, this would be interesting. Shut it down. Shut it down.
He's asked a question. I'm going to ask you to answer it with alternative answers.
Okay.
He said, is there an industry more at risk of spreading COVID-19 than the NRL?
I've got one.
Yeah.
A person that works at an aged care facility.
That's true.
How about, what's another one? Man, it's hard to beat that, eh? What about, I don't know. I think that covers it for me.
Well, he's sitting here. Not only are the Codes players regularly forced into close contact with each other, they also have a history of struggling to follow guidelines. And this has been a common theme over the last week, that NRL players are just all dickheads and they always break the rules, based on the fact that Latrell Mitchell, Josh Adokar, and Nathan Cleary, three players have done the wrong thing. And there was some absolute just gutter garbage which came from Brisbane the other day, which showed two Broncos players having a chat in a park with, one of the players' kids, saying, "Oh, the breaching rules and stuff like that," and going, "What is this trash?"
And did you see why they were meeting?
It was in a park or something, wasn't it?
You know what it was, because it was what's his name, the young bloke that did his knee, Bird.
Oh yeah.
And it was Darius Boyd. The Broncos had set it up so that Darius Boyd could be a mentor for Bird because Bird's done his knee. And they saw it as a mental health thing. And they really hadn't said much about it until those pictures come out. And the Broncos were like, this was part of that program that they set up for Bird as a support network for him. And having Darius as being a mentor for him during a tough time in his career. And that's why they were meeting. It was all about that.
Horrible NRL players.
I know. Just, they can't even follow the guidelines.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that, 5 players out of 480 odd couldn't do the right thing, that's just a sign that the other 475 are all going to do the same thing, isn't it? That's what they're saying here.
If you think NRL players can actually follow guidelines, you must not have TikTok, because TikTok videos just showed me that shut it down. We got to shut it down, Andrew.
I had an answer.
Okay.
To this question by Peter Fitzsimons.
Okay.
And I'd say rugby union, because there's 2 more players on the field for each side. So there's 4 more players.
Well, do you know that rugby union has a history of players being in close contact with one another and rolling around
a lot more frequently?
Yeah, definitely. They roll around in the mud. They eye gouge one another. Just generally. So
Yeah,
undercurrent of racism through the whole thing, but we won't talk about that right now.
we won't go there.
No.
Malcolm Knox. He said, "How can the NRL slam wayward stars? They are its ultimate ambassadors."
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "We don't need to go anymore. We know that that's sarcasm." Malcolm Knox, I think what's happened with him is someone who liked rugby league a long time ago ran over his dog, and he's held a fucking grudge ever since.
Yeah, he's one of those. There's about 2 or 3 of them that they come out of their ivory tower and look down on the peasants, and then they write an article, and then they go through and they fill it out with their thesaurus, and they finish their article and they say, yes, that's another piece finished. Because they don't just write articles, they write pieces.
Pieces of art too. He's just a bitter, sour old prick. That's all he is.
Exactly. And you're not clever, Malcolm, you fuckwit.
No, it's just crappy content, mate. We can all do that shit.
Exactly.
Corona cops to patrol NRL players as one warrior is not allowed to enter Australia. Corona cops.
Fucking stupid. How fucking stupid is it?
That's mad.
Let's go with it, okay? So how do you think these cops will work? Because I think it'll be, first of all, I think they'll be in vans that'll be high vis all over them. And when they drive around, it'll automatically inside of it, it'll be playing the theme to the bill. Remember the bill? It used to be on ABC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be like that. And then they'll jump out and it'll be like a SWAT team, but they won't have SWAT gear on. They're going to have their face masks on and their gloves, and they're going to knock on the door, and they're going to like bust in and say, Corona police. And they're going to just run in and swab the player that's supposed to be in isolation. And they'll put the little swab in the little jar thing and seal it up, and then they'll just run back out the house and into the car again, and, you know, the bill comes back on, and then they're off to the next player's house. So I think that's how it's going to work.
That'd be the way to do it.
Mm.
I was thinking maybe it might be just a whole heap of displaced transit officers.
Yeah, that aren't doing parking tickets.
Yeah, because, you know, they want to be police, but they're not good enough. So this can be this could be their calling.
It might be that, hey.
That's Corona cops. Fucking hell.
Corona cops. They're so goofy. These goofballs don't know how life works. That's the funny thing. Like, have you ever seen how journalists, they talk about how life works and they don't understand how normal human beings interact? And so they say things like, well, you know, when people go down to the pub and they're drinking after work and they're talking about politics and they don't understand, it's like, that's not how people fucking work, you idiot. You fucking sociopathic prick.
It's humorous to say the least.
Mm.
Now, one thing I'm going to throw in here, which I've just thought of without warning, the Fox Sports team, they've been doing some lists.
Oh no!
And it's the best players from each position in the NRL era, so since 1998.
Okay, I love the NRL era because it's just so fucking random.
Yeah.
It's just no reason for it to be an era. It's not an era.
Yeah, it's what you go to when you don't have any idea what happened to the game prior to the Super League War.
Yes. It's what you do when you pretend that you're an expert, but you don't actually fucking know anything about the game other than what you've been told by other people that don't really know much about the game.
Exactly right. So they've got their, I think it's top 8 for each position. So at fullback, I'll go from 8 down to 1, okay?
Okay.
RTS.
Wow. Oh, shit. There better be 7 fucking good players you name next.
All right. So I knew this was going to be a good start. So the next one is Brett Stewart, then Jared Hayne, then Anthony Minicello, Darren Lockyer, Greg Inglis, James Tedesco, and then Billy Slater. And There's one glaring omission for mine, and that's Tim Brasher.
Yeah, because Tim Brasher would have still made it. I mean, RTS is way too low. He's just way too low.
Way too low.
Do you know there was apparently an article that said and I think it was the top 8 most under pressure players in the NRL, and RTS was one of them. And it's like, what the fuck are they talking about? And that was a Telegraph article anyway. I think that RTS is better than Stewart. I
don't know how to Stewart and Hayne.
Oh yeah, Hayne. That was the other one. He's better than Hayne. 100% better than Hayne.
Yeah.
Man, you get towards the top of that list. It's a very, very good list. We've been very lucky with fullbacks.
Oh yeah. So who's next on your best wingers? All right. I'm learning these for the first time as well with you. So we've got number 8, Blake Ferguson, and then Manu Vatuvei, Adam McDougall, Matt Singh, Lottie Takiri, Wendell Saylor, Nathan Blacklock, and Brett Morris. Interesting to note that Israel Folau didn't get a mention.
Yeah, I mean, Folau, what about, Semi Radradra? It's hard to go past the impact. I know he didn't play for a long time, but damn, he played well. What about, Vunivalu's record is fantastic. Josh Addo-Carr, he didn't get a mention.
Yeah. Pat Richards.
Have you seen his kickoffs, man? They're fucking game changers.
They're insane. Best centres. I bet one of them's a commentator for for Fox Sports. Let's see. 8, Steve Maddie, Latrell Mitchell, Ryan Girdler, Mark Gasnier, Matt Gidley, Justin Hodges, there he is, Jamie Lyon, and Greg Inglis. So Inglis is on 2 lists.
And you know what? That's fair enough, to be honest.
Yeah. Would you have Jamie Lyon as the second best centre in the game since 98?
No, I couldn't. No, he wouldn't be the second best centre since 98. I'm just trying to think, man, did E.T. play in 98?
Yeah, I think he played up till 2000, didn't he?
Yeah,
Here I'm asking you, I'm the bloody historian stats guy.
Yeah. I'm sure he played.
Do your job, arsehole. Yeah, he played up until 2000.
Okay, so, first of all, to leave him out, and look, he wouldn't have been at his best the last couple of seasons, but damn, he is one of those, he's not one of the greatest centres of all time. I think, and when I say greatest centres of all time, I'm talking like the top 5 of all time, but he is definitely in that tier that's below those guys. He was fantastic especially the second half of his career. We talked about this, I think, in an episode we didn't record, how he became a defensive specialist and was just fantastic, and his attack was unquestionable. Yeah. Trying to think, when did Renouf retire?
Oh, that's a good one. I think he may have played until 2000 as well.
I feel like he played NRL footy.
He played 98-99.
Well, he
scored 20 tries in 26 games in 98 and 6 games in 10 tries in 99, and then went over to Wigan for 2 seasons and scored 43 tries in 59 games over there. Absolute try-scoring freak.
How about this? I was thinking about this the other day, and I know we've talked about him a little bit. Is Renouf the best centre you've seen in your lifetime?
Oh,
It's this is really difficult.
He's definitely in the top 3, without question.
Who would be the others? I think Inglis is right there. Renouf. I still say Meninga.
Yeah, you'd have to go with those 3.
Yeah.
Again, as you said, Eddinghausen to be close. He'd probably be 4th. But I'd have... he's definitely in the top 3.
Yeah. So, I think you and me are willing to say Renouf should definitely be on that list.
Definitely.
I would have E.T. on that list.
Mm.
You know, how do you leave those two off? See, this is the thing. This isn't really an NRL era thing. It's like, oh, it's just what I can remember from the last fucking 10 years list. That's
Exactly.
what these really are.
Exactly. What's the next one here? Best halves pairing. Because they couldn't think of five. Yeah, they couldn't think of 5/8s and halfbacks. So we just have to do halves pairings.
That's hilarious.
So number 7 is Munster and Cronk because they played 13 games together.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Foran and Cherry Evans. That one deserves to be there.
Yeah, that should be there, yeah.
Benji Marshall and Scott Prince. Let's be honest. They didn't even play 40 games together.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a... I mean, Benji, as you know, that early on, it's like they couldn't come up with the fucking individual decisions. What a joke.
Yeah. Morgan and Thurston.
Well, no, I wouldn't say.
The Johns brothers. I mean, I would have probably had Andrew Johns and Sean Rudder. Because let's be honest, Andrew Johns carried both of those two players.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, that's the premiership winning halves combination in the NRL era that we're going with here. I'm trying to think if Andrew Johns played alongside. Didn't he play alongside Jared Mullen for a little while?
Ooh.
I think he might have. I could be wrong, but I think he might have. And if he did, I mean, and look, it's all Joey. It's all Joey Johns. But if he played alongside Jared Mullen, that's a pretty damn good halves pairing.
Yeah, they would have played alongside each other for the last 3 seasons of Joey's career.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, then I would take that pairing, I think, over him and Rudder, and probably him and his brother too. I mean, his brother's career tailed off pretty quickly.
Yeah. After that, we've got Kevin Malters and Alan Langer.
Yep.
And then at the top of the list is Luke Keary and Cooper Cronk.
Oh, that's fucking ridiculous. That's ridiculous. What about, didn't Walters and Lockyer play as a halves pairing?
Yeah.
Like, that's on an all-time scale. Walters and Lockyer as a halves pairing. You put that alongside, that's going to be hard to beat. And I'm not saying they're the best ever, but damn, they're in the conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Who else? Like,
Let's see. How about
Campbell? This is going against, because I didn't rate Craig Gower that good, but Gower and Campbell was a pretty damn good halves combination.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they belong on this list, but I think that you could consider them. What other ones would there be that jump out?
Fittler and Finch?
100%.
What, 2 or 3 grand finals in a row? Who was the...
What about Scott Prince and Brett Camorley? Oh, it's not Scott Prince. What's his name? I can see his face.
When Camorley was at which club?
At the Storm.
Oh, Scott Hill.
Scott Hill, that's it.
Ah, that's a good one.
How did they not pick that one?
That's a good one.
What's going on?
Yeah. God, they even played test football together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty glaring omission.
This is a really easy list that we're coming up with, really, like, just off the top of our heads.
Yeah. Jeez. All right. Who we got next? Best hookers.
Okay.
Ennis at 8.
Ooh.
Josh Hodgson at 7. Damien Cook at 6.
Isaac Luke at 6? Who was at 6?
Damien Cook.
Okay.
Number 5, Isaac Luke. Number 4, Robbie Farah. Number 3, Jeff Tuvey. Number 2, Danny Medeiros. And number 1, Cameron Smith. It's hard to argue with Smith at 1.
Yeah, you got to go Smith at 1. You got to go Badiris at 2, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Tuvey at 3.
If we're just going after 98, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Don't mind Isaac Luke being in there.
Yeah, Isaac Luke at his best was outstanding.
And for quite a few years too.
Yeah. He probably didn't have the longevity that you would have hoped he would have, but at his best, like he reminded me a little bit of a Damien Cook in that at his best, he's right there as one of the most damaging attacking players in the game. And he's a really good defender too. He really doesn't get enough credit for what he brought to South when they were at their best.
Absolutely. I'm surprised Luke Pritis isn't on the list.
Well, yeah, I think, Pritis was an outstanding player, very, very good defender. One of those players, a little bit like a Cameron Smith, and you said this once before to me and it really stuck with me. Cameron Smith isn't going to have this highlight reel of individual brilliant things that he's done, but his knowledge of the game and the way he reads the game and stuff, that's the thing that makes him great. And that's the thing that made Luke Pritis great. And you saw that in the grand final where there was only 2 people in the whole stadium thought he was going to go down the blind side, and that was him and Luke Rooney.
Exactly. And I thought even for a long time, even when he was playing, that Pritis was very underrated as a player.
Yeah, look, when we got him, I knew that was one of those signings that was like, ooh, it was, there's some players that you get at your club and you just know you've got a blue chipper. So, I tell you the other player that he kind of reminds me of, and it's not in his playing style or his position or anything, but just that you're getting winning to your club. Glenn Lazarus. You get him to your club and it's like, oh man, that is a signing. So yeah, he was a bit like that when we got him.
Absolutely.
What other hookers? I'm trying to think.
There's Sean Berrigan.
Sean Berrigan, yeah. What about, he didn't have a huge, long career, but someone like a Brad Drew,
Yeah, Craig Wing.
Craig Wing, he was outstanding. Simon Benetti was pretty good.
Yeah, he was a very solid player.
Yeah.
Steve Walters also played in the NRL era.
He's got in there. He has to. He has to, yeah, with the North Queensland Cowboys.
Yeah, phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Best hooker of the 90s.
I agree with you.
And who else we got here? Oh, I'll go this one. I reckon the last one's going to be contentious, so we'll go with props next.
Okay.
The second last one. They haven't done second rowers.
Okay. What do you mean they haven't done second rowers?
They've got props and they've got locks.
Honestly.
There you go. Maybe they've gone middle forwards.
Middle forwards. You just want to slap every person that uses the term, man. Jeez.
Alright, so
I can't wait for the footy to start so we don't have to fucking deal with these dickheads.
So 8, we've got Jabaria Hargraves. 7 is Jesse Bromwich. 6 is Ruben Wiki. 5 is Lazarus. 4 is Matthew Scott. 3 is Steve Price. 2 is Shane Webke. And 1 is Petro Sivanasiva.
How dare they? How dare they? Okay, so if you're just going on their performance in the NRL era, whatever the fuck that means, Webke has to be number 1. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm willing to even say Petro number 2, just for his longevity.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I got to put Lazarus at 3.
Yep.
Number 4, man, Jesse Bromwich is not a bad pick. He's been a good player for a long time.
He has. I'm not even opposed to JWH being in there at 8.
See, I kind of am with him because I think I've never considered him to be an elite front rower.
Yeah, I don't rate him as overrated.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for me, the last few years, he started to get back to being what you expect from a prop forward every week. Like in his 20s, he could have been guilty of fading in and out of games a little bit, or just not turning up one week every now and then. But I don't think that that's a common issue with him anymore. Maybe because he's not 30 anymore.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matty Johns. In the peak of his career now, he's 31.
Yeah, he's finally hit there. What other players would they have been missing in there? I mean, I would consider Paul Gallen to be a front rower.
Well, he finished there, but I dare say he'll be in the locks.
Yeah.
The locks
But that,
list there.
like, if somebody said list the front rowers, and I mean, he would be an English sort of thing for me, that you could say front rower, back rower. But I would consider him to be a front rower. And I think at his best, he was playing in the front row, to be honest.
Yeah.
Who else are they missing out there? I mean, you know what? James Tarmo at his best was outstanding.
Yes. When was that again?
It was back when he was a fucking Cowboy, before we paid him all the money to come to Penrith. Some other players, you know, and I'm just tossing up names here that jump out for me. Paul Rahihi was fantastic.
Oh, God, I loved him.
He was real good. Big man, too. Would you say Willie Mason was a front rower or a second rower?
No, I think he was just as good in the front row.
Yeah, because, I mean, him at his best, he was great.
Would you put Brent Kite in there? Nathan Kalis?
Well, Nathan Kalis was another one I was thinking of. I mean, these reliable, I guess it depends what you're thinking you want out of a front row. So, for instance, you get someone like, say, a Steve Matai. Do you want a Steve Matai who brings you a lot of impact, but maybe doesn't have the engine to go for that many minutes? Or do you want someone like and I'll go to the extreme end of the scale, someone like a James Graham who gives you a consistent effort over a longer period of time? And this is something that I've had arguments with people like, what would you rather? Would you rather 60 brilliant minutes, or would you rather 80 pretty good minutes? Like, what would you rather?
I think from a prop, given that you're going to have two on the bench, I'd be going with the 60 minutes of brilliance.
I know, I've always thought that as well. Give me someone like, and that's what made Shane Webke so brilliant, was that, you know, he gives you 100% and it's just the best prop in the world. And then you give him a rest on the bench and he comes back and he gives you the best prop in the world at the exact same level for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
That's why he was the best, in my opinion.
And had a big motor on him too. Like, he could do good minutes. He's not the sort of player who'd do 45, 50 minutes. He'd do an hour each game.
Yeah, yeah. And his last run of the game could be his best run of the game, and the run before that might have been the best run of the game, and the run before that, you know, and he was just like it was just like this unstoppable force. That's what made him so good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
would you put Andrew Fafita in the list?
He's got to be talked about. I mean, the things that he brings you, that's a different thing altogether with this. I mean, first of all, his endurance is like a superpower. I mean, he shouldn't be able to play the way he plays. And I'm talking about him at his best. Because at his best, he could play 80 minutes for you in some miracle, you know. His offloading was great.
The thing that's remarkable about him, and people are going to take this the wrong way, but he is such a unique player as far as the front row goes in the modern game, that he stands out the same way. And I'm not saying he's like this player, but he stands out in the same way that Arthur Beetson stood out when he came onto the scene, in the fact that the skills, you just look at him and going, how does a player that big do that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he does that thing where he can drift across field like a 5'8" and just palm a ball off somewhere. You're just going, that's not what his job should be. yet he can do it and do it successfully. He's not in the same ballpark as Beetson, let's be honest. But the fact that he's got that unique skill set that pretty much no other prop forward's got, not all of it anyway, it just makes him stand out that little bit. And so, I don't know, I think because of that, and the fact that he's a genuine prop with X factor who can change a game, I've definitely got to put him in the list somewhere.
Look, there was a point there with New South Wales where for us to win, he was going to be the difference. And I think that the frustrating thing about Fifita was that he would have these games where he literally could not be stopped. Like, you could try your best and stuff. He was going to come up with these, and it was weird. It was like skill and power and endurance, and he just would rip teams apart. But then he'd also have games where he was really quiet. And look, it's, Fifita in a quiet game is still one of the better front rowers in the game. But when you know he can completely end an opposition team with what he can do, you want that all the time. And maybe you can't get that all the time unless you are literally an all-time great. But, if he could just do it more often, he would be in the top, I would say the top 3.
Yeah.
Maybe at least the top 4.
Yeah. The skill set he has is freakish. Another player with a similar freakish skill set would have been someone like Dave Taylor, but he just lacked the drive to want to play football. Yeah,
unfortunately. I tell you what, this is going to be a funny one. For a very short period of time, he was on the juice, Rodney Howe. He was unstoppable.
He literally had beast mode in his veins.
He really did. Anybody that thinks that steroids do not work, just go and watch Rodney Howe before he got banned. He went from being like, oh yeah, solid, does a job, to, oh my God, this guy is a wrecking ball, back to being like, oh yeah, Rodney Howe. Remember him? Yeah. He was a literal wrecking ball. It was incredible.
Yeah, he was amazing. But,
I'll tell you another one, and we talked about him earlier. You've got to think about someone like an Adrian Morley. He'd have to be in the conversation. I tend to look at Sam Burgess more as a front rower than a second rower.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah? I'm not crazy in thinking that?
Nah.
Okay.
I would have Nathan Kalis in there too.
Yeah, I would talk about Nathan Kalis.
If for one reason, because he's the only prop since 1998 to kick a field goal. There's a fact for you people.
Yeah,
all right.
That's a good one.
Last one, locks.
Locks, and this counts for locks and second rowers.
Well, I'm assuming, I don't know, they haven't done a second rowers one yet. Maybe that's tomorrow.
Let's just call them back rowers.
Okay. 8, Jake Trbojevic. 7, Luke Ricketson.
No.
6, Ben Kennedy. 5, Corey Parker.
No, what the fuck? No way.
4, Bradley Clyde. 3, Paul Gallen. Are you sitting down?
Yeah.
Okay. 2, Jason Taumalolo.
Fuck off.
Who do you reckon they got as number 1?
Oh man. Who the fuck? I don't know. Did God play? Did I miss God playing? Because if he's better than Taumalolo.
I'll give you a clue. He wasn't born in the Southern Hemisphere.
What? They haven't
Sam
put
Burgess.
No way. They're fucking off their heads. That is dumb. That's so dumb. Why would they be so dumb, Andrew?
Says he, Jason Taumalolo is closing in hard, but for now, Burgess deserves top spot for his toughness and dedication to rugby league over the course of his glittering career. This is a bloke who was so dedicated to rugby league, he went and played rugby union in the middle of his rugby league career.
Fucking went. He left. He left. How can I say he was dedicated? He literally left. He walked out halfway through his fucking contract.
Oh, fuck me.
I mean, seriously, are we being too harsh here, or is this some dumb shit?
I'm rating Tormalolo and Gallen ahead of Burgess.
I would rate Tormalolo ahead of him. I would rate Gallen as a back rower ahead of him. I would take, I would.
Glenn Stewart, who's not on the list.
You know what? Trebojevic, I'd take ahead of. If you're looking at a whole career, taking Trebojevic ahead of Sam Burgess.
Yeah.
If you're looking at peak performance, Tawera Nikau.
Oh yeah.
Tawera Nikau at his best was. You just got to look at that Storm Grand Final. He should have won that Clive Churchill medal. He was just like possessed. It was incredible. Maybe one of the best Grand Final performances I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
I think Ben Kennedy was a pretty good player, but overrated.
What about Chris Hyington?
Well, as one of England's best.
Steve Menzies?
Yeah, because we're looking at back rows. Yeah, I keep on just thinking of locks. I mean, we're looking at back rows, you got to say Menzies. You got to look at Gordon Tallis.
Trent Merrin?
I think Trent Merrin's overrated. Has been overrated.
I'm just throwing names at you here.
Yeah.
Trent Waterhouse?
At his best, he was very good. Did Ian Roberts was NRL Era, wasn't he? Yeah, he was.
Ooh.
He played for the Cowboys.
I'll have a look. He'd be close.
Yeah.
He only played one season in 98.
Okay. Man, when he grabbed, I've talked about when he grabbed a Wendell Sailor, haven't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, God, I loved seeing that. It was so funny seeing that. I would love to hear Wendell Sailor talking about that, actually. I think it'd be really funny, because Wendell knew he fucked up. What are the back rowers? Brad Thorne, I think you got to talk about him.
What about Mark Geyer?
Mark Geyer, that's another one. You know who we missed out from the props was Paul Harrigan.
Yeah.
Tony Butterfield.
Yeah, Harrigan played 2 years.
What are the back rowers?
Butterfield played the first 3 years.
Yep.
There you go. Well, look. There you go. Fox Sports. Once again, we're doing your work for you.
Yeah. They should employ both of us, eh? Like, just say they employed you and me, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We give podcasts. You're literally the number one rugby league historian in Australia by a long, long way, right? And then you are also a statistician, okay? I can do all of those, like, you know, those left field articles. You do those historical articles. We're just, between us, we just give everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, the ultimate unit.
Pretty much, yeah. That's what she said.
Hey, you're the SEO king.
I will honestly take that on board, because I am, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm like the Rain Man for SEO, hey?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just have a look at some of the episode descriptions and titles of our podcast episodes.
Yeah.
SEO genius.
It is just something to behold. That's one thing I've always been good at, the headlines and SEO stuff. That's why it's funny when you get an email from some bloody company in India saying, oh, we'll do some SEO for your website. It's like, please, go and look up Americans are laughing at Josh Dugan's fucked up tattoo and see what comes up first. All right?
Exactly. That's a search string. I'm sure it's had tons of hits.
Really, I think that was my first article that I wrote that I would suggest was a viral hit. I feel like that's my first viral one.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Yeah. Now,
Mm-hmm.
have you had any emails?
We've had some emails from our listeners, our wonderful listeners. Nothing about the cure to coronavirus, unfortunately. That would have been really cool, but that didn't happen. So let me go through and find, because there's been a few of them, and I don't want to miss out, because they go back a little bit of a way. Not that one. Here's one. We did that one. So, okay, so now I can scroll up. As you can tell, I didn't get, with not logos on. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
We've got one here from, that's one I got to talk to you about later on. Sorry about that. Okay. So here's one from, Patrick. And Patrick said, I thought the NRL had no assets and just blew all their money away. And then he sent the article, 9 Eyes NRL digital arm in new TV deal. He said the NRL could be set. Oh yeah, that's the headline for that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, Patrick sent us that email, because I don't want people to think that we don't read the emails, you know. We read every single one. We might not reply back to you, but we try and read it online, on the air, sorry. We got one here from Jeremy, and he said, Hey guys, enjoy listening to the podcast and am emailing as I have a question regarding the Immortals.
Oh.
Correct me. I know, eh? Correct me if I am wrong, but from it mentioned by Fergo, his belief is that there should be a maximum of 2 Immortals inducted per decade to maintain the exclusivity of the Immortals. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was an idea I had.
Okay. He says, in that case, if the 2 of you were able to restart the Immortals concept and choose a maximum of 2 per decade, who would be the 2 that you would pick for every decade from 1908 to 2008, as according to the 2 of you, there should be a 10-year wait even before considering who should be picked as the next Immortal. So as a result of the players who have been retired by the end of 2018, e.g. Darren Lockyer and Jonathan Thurston, who would be my picks to be inducted as Immortals in 2008, according to your guidelines. So he'd pick Thurston and Lockyer. Anyway, stay safe in these uncertain times and continue the good work that the 2 of you are doing, because the mainstream media ain't doing any good. So thank you for that, Jeremy. That's a very nice email and a really good one too.
Yeah. Well, I did put out my list of who I thought should be the Immortals, but I'll read them out again here now.
Okay.
So from 1900 to 1909, I had Dally Messenger and Arthur Halloway.
Mm-hmm.
In 1910 to 1919, I got Frank Burge and Duncan Thompson.
Yeah.
1920 to 29, Harold Horder and Jimmy Craig. 1930 to 39, Dave Brown and Herb Steinort. In the 40s, Clive Churchill and Duncan Hall. The 50s, Reg Gasnier and Norm Proven. 60s, Langlands and Raper. 70s, Fulton and Ken Irvine. 80s, Wally Lewis and Arthur Beetson. 90s, Mal Meninga and Peter Sterling. And 2000s, I've got Andrew Johns and Brad Fittler. And that opens up 2010 to 2019, which my plan was you would be looking at those for 2010 to 2019. You'd be looking at those in 2030. So you put down your 2 inductees.
Yeah.
10 years after they've retired.
Yeah.
Or so, or something like that. It was going to be. Yeah, player must retire for at least 10 years and be in the Hall of Fame before they can be nominated for Immortal status. So you'd be nominating the 2010 to 2019 inductees in the year 2030.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. That way they've had that time for you to assess their dynasty, the legacy, that sort of thing, and go from there. It does mean, though, that the 2010 to 2019 one's probably going to include Darren Lockyer, and it's going to be one of Thurston, Smith, Slater, Inglis, those guys there. But 2 of those can come into the next one as well if they've played after 2020, which Cameron Smith will have. So he can go in the next batch after.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where it's at. But that was just think off the top of my head. I mean, obviously Fittler and Sterling are 2 that you could probably you could probably drop Sterling and put Fittler there. You could probably put Laurie Daly there. Tim Brasher.
Tim Brasher.
But yeah, the more recent ones are going to be more contentious. People aren't going to argue too much with some from the past because that's going on what historians tell you, so to speak. But I have, in that list, I've included every single player that's currently an Immortal as well.
Oh, okay. And now, was that something you made sure you did, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because I'm not opposed to the players they've got there as Immortals.
Okay.
With the exception of Meninga and Johns, but only because at the time I thought it was too soon to be inducting them in there. Not because I didn't think they deserve it.
Yeah. I get that.
As I said, I want to see a legacy before someone gets promoted to that sort of thing. I hate the fact that you hear people talking about Cooper Cronk's going to be the next Immortal, or, Cameron Smith. As obvious as Cameron Smith is probably going to end up being an Immortal, I don't want to see talk about that now. I want to be talking about that in 10, 15 years' time.
Yeah, and I am I agree with you on all of that. And I remember when you talked about the 10-year, they had to be retired basically for 10 years before we even look at it. And it is a long time. It's a very long time, but I think that it is also the right amount of time. And tonight we've talked about a lot of great players who we've brought up names who are very, very good players, but it's the players that you start to think about, are they an Immortal? They're the ones that their legacies continue on and they jump out at you. And some players that happens with, other players, they sort of miss the cut, and but that's the point. And when you get to this level too, and we've talked about this before, you are nitpicking. You are trying to look for holes in careers that everything was achieved in. I think you and me agree that Cooper Cronk is not an Immortal level player by any stretch of the imagination.
No. But this is the thing, is when you start talking Immortals and you start dismissing players, people think, oh, you must think that was shit, and going, no.
Not at all, yeah.
We are discussing the absolute cream of the crop, and which is at the very top of that crop.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to, you actually are trying to find that needle in the haystack. It's hard work to do.
Like the very, very, very best of all time. I don't think Cronk is, he wouldn't even be in the conversation for me.
No. That's the thing. I remember putting this out on Twitter when, was it 2018, when 5 players were inducted as Immortals.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying how I thought it was a great idea because you're starting to get players who deserve the honour from pre-war being inducted.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are arguing with me saying, oh, it's too many in one go, it's cheapened the whole thing. And when I put out the fact that, there should be 2 every decade like this, people were saying, oh, there's too many players. And I went, how's that possible? And when I did the numbers, my system means that less than 1/4%, 1/4%, less than that, are made Immortals of all players since 1908.
Wow,
how is that too many?
Yeah, and that should be the levels you're trying to hit. That should be that's unbelievable. Weren't you also the person that when people were saying that it was being cheapened, and I think it was you that said, do you realise that the Immortals were started to sell port?
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. And the NRL's actually given it some legitimacy since then. It's not a marketing thing anymore to sell bloody alcohol.
Yeah.
We're actually now properly recognising past great players.
Yeah.
And when you do it from when we could watch them on TV, as in, post-war, you're cutting out 5 decades of absolute legends of the game. That's just gross. It
really is. And I never understood that. And bringing them back in, it was just, it had to happen. And the thing is too, it was cutting out like absolute, some of the best players ever. And not just in their eras, ever. It was silly. It was so silly.
Yeah, I mean, people obviously know that I've spoken a lot about Duncan Thompson, okay? They need to realise that it wasn't until Andrew Johns came along that at the end of every decade, a lot of media organisations would do this thing where they'd name the greatest team of Australian Rugby League players of all time. And every year up until 1990, Duncan Thompson was the halfback.
Mm.
I can't believe that's been forgotten. And it wasn't until Andrew Johns came along that he got the gong in 2000, 2010, so on and so forth. But Duncan Thompson was still regarded as better than Peter Sterling, who a lot of people like to push, and rightfully so. Sterling was a phenomenal player. But it just shows you the legacy that Thompson had, that he was still regarded better than Sterling when Sterling was still playing in 1990.
Mm-hmm. And so,
that's just a hell of a legacy.
Yeah, and there's not many people like that have played the game where, I mean, Frank Burge is another one of those players where it's like, when somebody says Frank Burge, you just shut up. That's it. It's like, oh yeah, Frank Burge. Like, it
took until Steve Menzies come along before we got to see someone like Frank Burge.
Yeah, that was like, oh, this is maybe what it kind of looked like.
Yeah.
You know?
70 years.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. That's why I rate Steve Menzies so highly, you know. The fact that he still is, he's been the only player where you could look at it and be like, man, that's kind of what Frank Burge would have been like. This doesn't even make sense looking at it now, you know.
And everyone knows that Steve Menzies was a phenomenal try scorer.
Yeah.
Frank Burge was 10 times the try scorer that Steve Menzies was.
Oh.
That's the thing people got to put in their heads is, you know, we thought Menzies was good, and he was, but Burge was so much better.
Yeah.
And there's just so many players there. Jimmy Craig's another one. I'm planning on doing a profile piece on him shortly. Phenomenal player. Everywhere he went, success followed him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he went to Queensland when Rugby League was struggling up there, and he helped make Queensland the dominant state, you know, in the 20s, into the early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
New South Wales couldn't beat them after absolutely flogging them throughout 1908 through to 1919. That whole period there, Queensland couldn't lay a finger on New South Wales. And then all of a sudden, Jimmy Craig goes up there, a few good players start playing the game, and bam, Queensland's got this massive boom going on. And then he comes back and he plays for Western Suburbs, gets them their first premiership. You know, just everywhere he went, success followed him.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a fluke. Just phenomenal players like that. And there's a few Queenslanders that I've listed in there prior to the 70s that have long been forgotten because they didn't play in Sydney. And they really need to be remembered and put in there. As I said, Duncan Thompson, Jimmy Craig, Herb Steinort, those three. Yeah. Huge players up there in Queensland. So yeah, that's how I'd have it. Obviously, I'm open to having a debate about the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010 ones.
Yeah.
I was just for the 90s and 2000s, I was just stringing together a few names as examples of who would be in the conversation there.
Yeah.
And obviously, you can go anywhere you want.
It was like just off the cuff too.
Yeah.
And
that's what I kind of wanted to go with, was just players that instantly came to my mind because they're at the front of your mind for a reason.
Yes, and it's interesting because the only one that really stood out for me there that I don't think Peter Sterling's an immortal, and I'm not saying he's not a great player. But
that's the thing. You could probably ditch him and put Andrew Johns alongside Mal Meninga for the two immortals from the 90s. And that leaves you 4 players from 2000 to 2019 to put in there, which would be probably Lockyer, Cameron Smith, pick 2 more.
Well, here's a question for you. Let's just go the last 10 years and break the rule. If you had to pick one player that was an immortal in the last 10 years, who would it be?
Cameron Smith.
Not Greg Inglis.
No.
Man. I think Cameron Smith's the best hooker in the history of the game. And I think that, and if he plays 2 more seasons, it's not even going to be close. Like, his achievements are ridiculous. And what he has done in big games is ridiculous. Like, you just can't argue with it on any level. But man, Greg Inglis, I mean, like, Greg Inglis is, and I don't know, maybe I rate Greg Inglis higher than other people. I might rate him higher than you do. I don't know. But that, like, a dude that was the best fullback and the best centre, and possibly and it wasn't for very long, but the number 1 5/8 in the game, and who won premierships at 2 different clubs, and he wore Clive Churchill's medal when South Sydney won a premiership again. There's just so many, and like what he did for Queensland was ridiculous. The devastation he just did at international level. There's something about that. I feel like he has a lot of the achievements of Smith, but he also has that level of like, oh my God, this guy is just on another level to everyone physically, as well as the skill level on top of that as well.
Yeah, look, there's another player I'd throw into that same sort of category, and it's Benji Marshall. But I didn't throw him up either, and that's defying my own bias because I love Benji as a player.
I agree. And this is
another player.
It's the Immortals, man.
Other players that I've missed out on, Lazarus and Webke.
Yeah,
skip over those.
That's the thing, and that's what we're talking about when we get to this level of the Immortals. Like everything I said earlier about Webke, for instance. But who do you leave out? Like, okay,
the hard part's always going to be too is that forwards don't tend to get mentioned too often in the modern day.
Yeah.
As Immortals, it's always halves. Always halves. Sometimes you get a few backs, but it's mostly always going to be halves.
Okay, here's a question for you, and this is the beauty of picking Immortals because none of the choices are wonderful. Like, yeah, and you're having to strike players off your list that are like the best players of all time, you know. If you had to choose between Cameron Smith in the last 10 years and Jason Taumalolo, who do you pick?
See, this is the thing. And this is what makes it tricky.
Yeah.
Is that you could save Taumalolo for the 2020 to 2029 nominations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take that risk? That's why I think it's good to have that 10-year wait.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I'd almost certainly have him in the conversation for the 2010 to 2019 and the 2020 to 2029 ones. And he's going to be in the conversation for both. He's in the peak of his career across both of them. So
he is, yeah.
That's where it gets interesting. And that's the thing too. Cameron Smith's playing in this decade. They don't have to be at their peak for each decade. That's the other thing I got there too. They just had to have played at least one game in it.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
interesting.
That helped to get more of the best players in there as possible.
But you know what I love about these talks about the Immortals and like, you know, you're choosing so few players and you're sort of kind of thinking of like, who was the best, who won the most, who achieved the most. You're laying all of these things on top of one another. Who had the biggest impact, who changed the game, all these different things. And when you and me talk about it and we'll chuck players up and like you really have to stop and think because there's just so many players and that really should be what the Immortals are about. I also wouldn't be against, and this is the only thing I have against, you have to pick like 2 players from each decade. Sometimes I think you have golden eras where you get more than those 2 players in a decade, and then I think some decades you could skip. And
That's true.
There's not many, but I think there's some points where you could, like I could make a really good argument that in the 80s, I could just go with Wally Lewis.
Yeah. This is, though, the reason why I said that you don't have to be at your peak in each decade. You only have to have played at least one game in it.
Mm-hmm.
because it means that if you've got any sort of crossover, it can make up for a weak decade because you have one player who may have played 3 games in 1989 but had an absolutely splendid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Bang, you can put them in the 80s, and then you can have 2 other players from the 90s who are also standouts. And, you've managed to get 3 great players from the 90s in the Immortals list.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a loophole, but it's one that ensures that the absolute best of the best all get in there.
Yeah. Look, I like your system.
And that way you're not picking someone as a token gesture because you need to have 2 and there wasn't much to choose from.
Yeah.
You actually are getting the absolute cream of the crop.
The thing about your system is that it also covers an area that I think is important, and I know you think is important as well, and that is that these players need to represent the entire history of the game.
Exactly, and I've said it before, and I'm big on the legacy of a player,
mm-hmm.
and it's hard to sum up what the legacy is, but the way I look at it is if there's a player who it's the one person you always talk about, they're the best in the world while they're playing, but within 3 or 4 years after they've finished, you barely hear about them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that says their legacy's not that strong. Not saying they weren't great players, but they didn't have that long-lasting impact on the game.
Mm-hmm.
You still hear players today, he's the next Wally Lewis, he's the next Brad Fittler, he's the next Andrew Johns. Those people, they get compared to those because those blokes have they've got that legacy.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had anyone come along and he's been regarded as the next Jonathan Thurston or the next Cooper Cronk, and so it's because of that. That's part of, sometimes the whole league thing is a bit of a feel thing, but you need to have something like that. Other times it can be factual, like the Duncan Thompson one, he was considered the best halfback up until 1990 of all time in Australia, but also because he helped Wayne Bennett become a coach.
Mm-hmm. So
a lot of Wayne Bennett's game plans and what he does as a coach comes from Duncan Thompson, and that is still involved in the game today. Might even be 5% or 2% of whatever Wayne Bennett does. But the fact is, Duncan Thompson's ideas and the way he saw the game and how it should be played is still being seen in the game today through Wayne Bennett. That's a hell of a legacy.
Okay, so, and I agree with you on all of that. I think that, and I guess the thing that gets pushed aside for sometimes, the legacy part, which I think is actually really important, like you do, is because it's hard to quantify that. It's hard to explain that. It's hard to, it's hard to sit down in a room and when somebody says, like, but why Wally Lewis? He didn't even win a premiership in the New South Wales Rugby League, and it's at some point you've got to be like, you had to see it. You had to see this man that decided to take on the strongest rugby league state that had ever been and said no, and then dominated them. And it didn't matter what they did to try and stop him. He said no and kept dominating. And there's something to that. And so here's my question to you. That means off-field stuff matters. And if off-field stuff matters, do you take into account player behaviour?
No. I don't think off-field stuff matters that much. For me, if I'm talking about Immortals, I'm only talking about what they did on the field.
Okay.
If we're talking about off-field stuff, then you're looking at a whole different range of players. You're then sort of saying, okay, Ken Arthurson needs to be involved in the discussion then. Because, his work as an administrator and stuff like that. And I don't think he should ever be there.
Isn't that part of a legacy, though?
Yeah, but we're talking about, the Immortals is about the best players.
Okay, but let's look at it this way, right? And I hope this is a fun discussion to listen to for people. This is how me and Andrew talk when we're not recording, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about Steve Renouf earlier, okay? Mm-hmm. And he's probably he's at least top 3 best centre I've ever seen, maybe the best centre, You line him up against Mal Meninga. Now, I would say this. I don't think Renouf is an immortal. I'm not saying he wasn't brilliant, but I don't think he's an immortal. But I would personally say that Mal Meninga is an immortal. Now, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't the fact that Mal Meninga did things like he was in 4 Kangaroo tours, was the Australian captain for so long, was the New Queensland captain for so long, but also the fact that he he coached Queensland to all those victories, isn't that part of his legacy? And
no, I don't look at what he does as a coach.
Okay, because
I only talk about their football career as a player. That's it.
And that's fair enough. And look, I think that's the way it should be too. But it's hard to forget those things as well. Like
it's true. But again, and sorry to cut you off, but again, if you go down that path, then you've got to throw in Wayne Bennett and Jack Gibson as immortals. And their playing career doesn't stack up to deserving immortal status as a player. And that's why you've got to have this very clear definition of what you're doing. So the immortals has to be players only. There was talk within, and I know this because I was involved in it for a little while, there was talk within the NRL for a while, they were going to have immortals and they were going to be a separate lot, but they were going to be, one lot was going to be coaches, another was going to be administrators.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to be many. Like there might have been 5 all up, but they were going to do like one every decade.
Yeah.
And so you'd have like Harry Sunderland to be in there, James Giltinan, Ken Arthurson probably would have been in there. But, that would have been one group. Coaches, obviously, you'd have Gibson, Bennett, and the likes. And so that way he'd recognise those who were elite that were not players as well, or they weren't elite players. It's hard to say Wayne Bennett was an elite player. He did go on a kangaroo tour with Australia to New Zealand.
Yeah.
So he wasn't exactly shit. A lot of people think that he was just an average footballer. No, he did wear this green and gold. So, but that was kind of because that conversation has existed. It shows that even within the NRL that they see that the Immortals is purely players only and purely only their playing careers. There was debate at the time because when I was involved in this, it was just before Andrew Johns got inducted in there. And they were debating then, some of the former players were debating that John shouldn't be included because of his off-field indiscretions. Excuse me. And we're not awarding players immortality based on how much of a clean skin they were. Right. There's a few players who would have in the past played up a bit themselves, but because the media wasn't as thorough in trying to find, dirty laundry and stuff like that in the closets of players in the past. We don't know about them.
Yeah.
Classic example, Johnny Roper and the man in the bowler hat story. If you don't know about it, when he was on a kangaroo tour, I think it was a bet he made with a fellow teammate, and whoever lost the bet had to run through some street in England in the middle of winter wearing nothing but a bowler hat. And the rumour of the story was that Johnny Roper lost the bet. And so he was streaking down the main street in some northern English town wearing a bowler hat to cover, I don't know if he wore it on his head or covered his genitals, but that was the story. Several years, or might have been a decade or two later, when he wanted to become a test selector, he figured, I need to get this story out, I need to get this skeleton out of the closet, so to speak. So the story came out that it was actually his teammate Dennis Mantiot who was the man in the bowler hat, and it wasn't Johnny Roper. And so it just goes to show that back then, if there was a bad story, it only got revealed when the player decided to reveal it. It wasn't because the media wanted the world to know about it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's the other way around. A player can't hide a story like that because the media's all over them. They're trying to find it anyway. So if you start bringing in off-field misconduct, there's no way of knowing what players of the past got up to because it wasn't reported on. And so it's hard to judge everyone on the same way in that way. So you can only go on what happened on the field. You've got to try to make sure that the judging system is consistent from 1908 to 2020. And the only way you can do that is what happened on the field, and that's it.
That's true. I've just got one last thing to say, right?
Sure.
If, I should have just said everything you said was wrong. No. No. If you were to do the Immortals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you took into account their playing career and their off-field legacy afterwards. And I think if you did that, you would have to, I mean, you've got maybe a 20-year period, and that's being really, really, that's cutting it fine to when you would be inducting these players. It would change the Immortals. I think it would keep the list very small. But then there are some of the game's great players who probably people don't understand the stuff they did after they retired. Like people probably don't understand like what Clive Churchill was doing after he retired. It was unbelievable what he did for South after he retired. Mal Meninga's another great example of like this great player who, he retires, and you can say what you want. He has all of those trophies that, for Queensland, and now he's coaching Australia. And I've got to say the job he's doing as the Australian coach is, I think, the best job I've seen from an Australian coach overall, with understanding the role and even winning, that I've seen maybe since Bob Fulton was the Australian coach. I think he did it right as well. It would change the concept in a big way, but it makes me wonder if we would get a list of Immortals that might be smaller, but that still have that legacy element that that might be the most important thing overall. It's an interesting one. I agree with you though. It needs to just be what they did in their playing days.
I think if you were to do that, it would change it. I think you'd find Wayne Bennett would end up on the list, because he did play for Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So, he was a decent enough player, and his coaching record is untouched.
Mm.
It would also mean that coaches like Craig Bellamy would have to be considered.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I guess Bellamy comes into it.
Trent Robinson.
Oh, you reckon Trent Robinson? See, I don't put Robinson in the same class as like when you look at short term, I do, right? But I think long term, I look at what Craig Bellamy's done, and I think Craig Bellamy might very well be the best coach of all time.
He's definitely in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
But then, Arthur Halloway should have been probably the first person to be inducted, given that he's got 10 premierships as a player and as a coach.
Yeah, exactly.
More than anyone else. Anyone else. And no one knows about that. That's why I had him as one of the first two. Like, him and Messenger as the first two.
And do you then add, you would obviously have, and as a player, he deserves it anyway, but like the stuff that Dally Messenger did would be laid on top of his playing career as well. Like, I don't think people realise that Messenger knew what his job was when he come across to the rugby league, and he wrung every single bit of athleticism out of his body that he could,
Literally. People should know he played 43 games of rugby league before he made his club debut in 1908.
Yeah. Extraordinary.
Insane.
And I don't think people realise that, Andrew. I reckon there's less than 100 people understand that about him, that he was all in. He was all in.
Yeah. Like, he played something like 60 or 70 games all up in his career, and only 5 or 6 of them were actually for East in first grade.
Mm.
The rest of the rep games, he played for the Metropolitan team in Sydney, then he played for Queensland, New South Wales, New Zealand, Australia. Just every rep team that was available, he was in it. Didn't matter where they were playing, he was in it. And got travelled around so much. 2 tours to England in consecutive years. That was when it was by boat. It was about 8 weeks each way. Think about that. 32 weeks out of 104 were spent on a boat going to and coming from England.
Yeah, just on the boat. Can you? I can't even imagine.
It's insane.
and then gets off the boat and has got to perform athletically, just that alone. And didn't just perform athletically, was still like one of the stars and was the person that everything was like. Can you imagine the pressure it would have been knowing that like this whole thing there was a lot of it was based on, man, they're turning up to see you play.
Yeah, and the whole thing was focused on him. I mean, after the second tour to New Zealand, England, when he came back in 1909, he just said, I've got to take a break. And then halfway through that year, we had the whole, as you'll hear in our 1909 episode that we did ages ago, the rugby league decides that it needs to go after rugby union and get the Wallabies. And even though they got all of the greatest players in the rugby union, which was the premier football code at the time, obviously, they still needed Messenger to be involved in the game. So they had to drag him out of his 1 year break to play in those 4 games for the Kangaroos against the Wallabies to make sure they still had some draw in it, just to make sure they got their money back. And sure enough, he went and played. He could not rest.
That's incredible. That's incredible. He must have been, as an athlete, the fact that he did have that break, but the fact that he didn't just completely break down quickly with all of that going on, he must have been just one of those, you know how sometimes there's a player, they're just never injury prone. You know who was like that was Petro Sivanasiva.
Yeah.
Like, there's just some players, and then you get other players, man, they can't stay healthy. He must have been like, just made of granite.
Just unbelievable. So his longest break was, he played his last game on that Kangaroo tour on February 22, 1909. Then he had the 8-week journey back to Australia. He played for Australia against the Maori on July 31. And then the following week, he played for the Kangaroos against the Wallabies, and he played in 3 of those games. And then started the 1910 season. So he didn't get a huge break. Probably got, 2 months, and then bang, straight back into it.
It's crazy.
Just insane.
You know what? We're so lucky to love a sport that's got a history that is just so rich and has got so many layers. And we've gone off on this crazy tangent all of a sudden where there's all of these beautiful, amazing stories that extraordinary people have done these extraordinary things. And you can even sometimes get away from the sporting aspect of it and what they did on the field and think about some of the other elements that they had to overcome before they even thought about sport. I love that about rugby league, and I always have. We're very, very lucky. And that's one of the things I know we talked about when we started this podcast, is just the chance to talk about these things and hopefully in just some tiny little way, open these books in these pages in our game's history to a wider audience. I hope that we're doing what we set out to do,
Absolutely. I just like the fact we talk about a bit of history on there.
Yeah.
I'll give you a bit of fact about Daly Messenger case. So I took a bit of guess about how many games he'd played at club level. So at the end of the 1909 season, he'd played 83 games of rugby league all up. Well, 3 of them were rugby union. That was in 1907 against the All Golds. But by the end of 1909, he played 83 games, and only 2 of them had been club games for East.
It's crazy.
So 81 rep games, 2 club games.
It's crazy to think about.
Yeah. The most experienced debut player ever in rugby league.
Yeah. People talk about the resume on this dude. Shut up.
I'm going to do some pretty thorough research on Daly Messenger over the next few weeks and stuff like that, and hopefully we'll put out an episode on him, because personally I've shied away from him, not because I don't want to, but because he is very well known, and if you want to find out plenty about Daly Messenger, it's not too hard to do. There's a lot written about him. So I've always tried to go and get stories of the other players and the other administrators who are just as important to the game but are barely known.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll try and get an episode out about Daily Messenger one day, because obviously the listeners love the history ones, and he's a key figure. So we'll have to get around to that sometime soon.
Yeah, doing a Daily Messenger episode, I can't even put that into words. That'll be amazing. We should also say to people that are listening, the International Rugby League is putting out a list on their Twitter feed that we're waiting for that to be finished, because we've had some people saying, please talk about this. We're going to wait until it's finished. We're going to look through the list. We might look through some of the nominations. We're going to do that in one block for one podcast. And then the next podcast we're going to do is basically me and Andrew are going to name our greatest rugby league teams of all time. So Andrew will do his one, I'll do my one. They're probably going to be very, very similar, because that seems to be the way that a lot of the stuff we do along these lines goes. But, I'm really looking forward to that one too, because that's another chance to talk about great players.
Exactly. I'm always keen to talk about history.
Yeah.
Suits my boring monotone style.
No, seriously, man, I love that people have got to hear a little bit about what we normally do. This is normally how we talk about footy. We'll start off talking about one thing, and then 3 hours later we're talking about how long it took to get on a boat and go to England, and where did they stop off? Let's look that up. Oh, how much did it cost? I think I found a ticket. And Andrew's always finding cool shit, and it's cool. People got a little glimpse in, I think.
Just a little glimpse, yeah. We opened the door a little bit there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a mixed episode. I'm glad that after a lot of the media stuff, we got to talk about what we really love talking about, which is footy.
Absolutely. And if you want to talk more about footy with us, you can follow us on Twitter at FergoFreakPod. We're also on Instagram at FergoFreakPod. On YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and you can email us, Freaky, at
podcast@leaguefreak.com.
Send us your emails and we'll read them out and have a good old yarn about them, as we've just done today. And make sure you get out there and subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on your podcast listening device, program.
Yeah, devices. You could probably do it on your TV these days, hey?
Probably do it on your fridge.
Yeah, I bet money there. Listen, if you've got a fridge that can play a podcast, send us a picture of it and we'll post it somewhere. I don't know where.
Bloody oath. We'll do something about that. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating and a review as well.
Yeah, and tell your friends about us. Get onto your friends and say, listen, I listened to this podcast. It's pretty good value. Just give it a listen, see what you like. Because that's the best way to promote the podcast. That and retweets and sharing posts that we put on Facebook and stuff like that. It all helps, and we honestly see the numbers jump when people do that. So it's fantastic.
Yep, you're all awesome, and keep doing what you're doing. Listen to us. We love it.
Yeah, we do. I got one last thing to say. Today, as we put this podcast out now, it is Star Wars Day. It is May the 4th. And so may the 4th be with you. May the 4th be with you. I'm going to put up a video, and you are going to see my Iron Man helmet, and you are going to see my lightsaber. So check it out if you've been hearing about it and you want to see what it's like. So it was a pretty good video I put together too. Andrew's seen it. What did you reckon, Andrew?
Mate, that's a massive lightsaber.
Thank you. It's pretty girthy, hey?
Yeah, it's very girthy. How did you make it glow in the dark like that?
You don't want to know. Let's just say I got a lot of scrubbing to do.
Yeah. I'm hoping that the X-rated video doesn't go out.
Imagine if
that's
imagine if I put out the wrong video. Oh shit, that would be hilarious. I don't have videos like that because no one sent me any. You fucks.
And on that glorious note, thanks for tuning in, everyone. May the 4th be with you. Catch you next time.